we're on.
Okay, so here's part 2, letter Tav. So the interesting thing about the Moedim, the festivals, is that if you are studying a subject, it seems to be an intellectual engagement. But when you actually do the Moedim, it changes your walking in the truth. You're behaving synchronized with the truth. So if I'm saying that this word that proceeded out of Yahuah's mouth, which was embodied as Yahusha the man, but it's still also this word. And the word is at the heart of the word, these 11 letters in the middle, the Moedim, then he gave us, because they're correlated with these festivals, we're participating in, we're doing the word, we're being the word, we're synchronizing our mind, our heart, and our behavior with the truth. If I'm articulating it clearly, what I'm saying is that it's not just a theory, it's not just an idea, a concept, but by making them Moedim, we are actually, it's like a dance. We are reveling with the frequency, the rhythm, the beating of the heart of the word itself. And so there's this word here, I'm not even sure I wrote it. Under the letter Kuf in this space here, it says on key, Aleph Nun Kaf Yod. Well, the word Anoki, yeah, but there's no O, there's no Vav in there. It's just Aleph Nun Kaf Yod. So Aleph is na Anaki. Anaki, hey, those are those guys, the deities that came from outer space on the orb that the Sumerians and the Assyrians drew pictures of. They're known as the Anunnaki. Yeah, but that's just the word that says I am. It's the first word of Exodus 20, spelled Aleph Nun Kaf Yod. But you can pronounce it A-N-K-Y as Anki. Just interesting that if we were to, see, this is in the line of Leviticus 23. If we were to be keeping these, let's say, in the right way, on the right calendar, it's like being on key, playing music. Same frequency. And the interesting thing is that when he was designing all this, let's say, is that he provided that, as it were, a dance step. And there's two other words here. Well, I don't remember where on the chart they are. I'd have to look for them. But one of them is raked, rocked, Resh Kuf Dalet, I think, which means dance. And the other one is hula, Het Vav Lamed. I don't remember where I wrote it. Might be up here somewhere. Well, anyway, the point is to see the Moedim as a dance, to see the Moedim as something with a rhythm, a frequency, like a song. And so it's not just that, well, we're the audience listening to a song or listening to the angels sing a song, but we are participating in the song as we just keep the Moedim, as we keep the Sabbath day. It's almost like the Sabbath day is this rhythm, like a drum beat, every seven. And so there's this discrepancy, just to address what are matters out there. There's a discrepancy with when is the day of the Sabbath. So I'll just say, we were all taught, who's we, Sunday is the Sabbath day. As a matter of fact, the band named Black Sabbath came out with an album in the late 60s, early 70s sometime called Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. And it's like, well, I thought they were talking about Sunday. Yeah, but that's not the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day, Yom HaShabbat, the word Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav. Well, Shin Bet Tav is the word daughter. Shin is the prefix, that which belongs to. So I could read Shabbat, Shin Bet Tav is that which belongs to daughter. Daughter of who? Well, Shin is the monogram, as we talked last week, of El Shaddai. So I could say, well, that which belongs to El Shaddai's daughter. It's one way to read the word Shabbat. But Shin Bet Tav in Deuteronomy 30 is translated return. Well, the word Tashuv, which is Tav, Shin Vav Bet, means return. So once you know the language, you realize, again, there's yods and vavs. You can stick them between the letters. There's prefixes and suffixes. And you just sit there and you look at the root consonants and know that sometimes you can have 3 or 4 prefixes or 3 or 4 suffixes. And so there's more than one way to read a word. If you have a 4-letter word, is it one prefix with 3 letters of the word, or is it 3 letters of a word with 1 suffix? Sometimes it's both. I had heard that when Esau, we talked about this, the word Shin Kuf, Shin Yod Kuf, or Nun Shin Kuf, that when Esau fell on Jacob's neck and he kissed him, that word kissed in Genesis has dots above it. And some rabbi said, yeah, he really wanted to bite him. It's like, what do you mean, bite him? Yeah, those dots are like vampire dots. It's like, come on, what, you guys. Well, I just saw, where did I write it? Well, anyway, I don't know where we wrote it here. I just saw, it was, I think this morning or last night, and I was looking in the dictionary under Nun Shin Kof, and it means to bite. It's like, what? The word to kiss or to give a drink of water and to be refreshed is Nun Shin Kuf, Nashki. But Nun Shin Kof is the word to bite, or it's to bite something off, like taking usury or a tax. That's where it was. It was this word down in Proverbs 28, verse 9, is that verse that says, he who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, even so his prayer is an abomination. And the word right before, the verse right before it, verse 8 of Proverbs 28, is the word bet, Nun Shin Kof, which means bite. That's another part of, I don't think we'll have time to get into that. But what I'm saying is that as you're studying this language, I had heard at one time that the words that have the letters het or kaf or kuf, or perhaps even the ayin, are very similar words because they all have that, what we would say in English, the K sound. Like Chanukah is Hanukkah or Hanukkah. It's like nobody knows how to pronounce it. It's like, well, I write it as a capital C, lowercase x. Other people write it with capital C, lowercase h. Some dictionaries will show an H with a dot underneath it because it's that guttural sound which we don't have in English. Like some places don't have an SH, so it just pronounces an S. Shin can be pronounced as either S or SH, but maybe they didn't have that sound way back in the, nobody knows what they had in the ancient days. But the fact that the K, the letter Kaf, so I write it K-A-F, just so you know, the open hand, and the Kuf, I write it Q-O-O-F. And I've seen some people spell it Q-O-F. Well, that's the word for monkey, kof and kof. It's like, yeah, it's just phonetics. It doesn't matter. Not true. To them, it doesn't matter. So you'll get the word Gaddafi spelled as either a G-H, a K, or a Q. It's like, how did you spell that? The leader of Libya for a while. What you realize is that among the professionals, those who establish the mind of the culture, which is now going to be artificially intelligence mastered, controlled, emanated, if they say it doesn't matter, then if you step out of line and think it does matter, you're now the troublemaker. And so you now got to get holocausted, or you now got to get inquisitioned, which they've been doing for centuries. The point is, what matters? Why would Tav have the same phonetic as Tet? But then if the Tet is the theta, that's a TH. But you'll see some people say, oh no, that's the Tav, it sounds like a TH. And it's like, whether the Tav sounds like a TH in English or whether the Greek letter theta was the tet, and it's like, wait a minute. You can have just like multiple dynasties of the Egyptian pharaoh. You could have this way in the north and this way in the south, or you could have four at once. You can never look back at history and say, this is what it was. You can't do it. What I'm saying is, for us making this present tense, like with this style of letter, and say, this is not about let's reminisce about antiquity. This is about let's make this alive now, today, for us. So let's find the truth that fits like a puzzle piece with our consciousness, with our thinking, with our heart, so that we can do it with gusto, with enthusiasm, being Yahuah's people that he always had wanted, that he never got. He never got. And if we choose to have as our Christ figure someone who said, yeah, Dad has a few problems, just I know how to deal with them, I'll change it, I'll make it easier for you. With me, you can be under grace. Him, yeah, he's got this OCD thing about law. Don't get him started. I'll give you grace. That's a lie. That's a corruption. Now, I just heard another video that somebody sent where this guy was saying, yeah, the Old Testament was all about law, but we got this new thing with grace, and it absolutely changed. So what my point is this. You can find many teachers about every subject. And when somebody says, hey, listen, this guy articulates it really well, I'll send you a video or a dozen videos about teacher pushing grace as being the covenant today for non-Jews. Send me 1,000 of them. I don't care. The point is, what's the truth? And to say, hey, I'm not a Jew. He didn't tell us we had to become Jews. He said we got to have eternal life. I don't even think that's the subject. The point is this. If Yahuah Zavot wants to extend eternal life to people who are not Israel, great, good for him. That's up between him and them. I don't care. I don't want anybody to burn in hell, even if they're stupid idiots, mean, nasty people. Some people you might wonder, say, maybe they deserve it. But the point is, hell is supposed to be a really, really, really bad place. And I'm not wishing that on anybody, because we're all blind, ignorant, deluded fools on this planet compared to the truth. Fools meaning what we think is justice, so we have to hurt somebody is like, what? What's wrong with my mind? What? I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with my mind. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. But if I avoid that entire subject and say, what does Yahuah Zavot, the Elohim of Israel, want his people to do? Yeshua said he came doing and saying exactly, without modification, without any difference, not to the right or the left, and that he would lead us as the model. Follow me. I'll show you how to walk this exactly. It's not impossible. Give you my Ruach, my spirit. He will help you walk, guide you in the truth. So I've mentioned before, in a way, the Psalmic is almost like this lighthouse. Why? Well, it's an engineered structure, like a trellis, like a tree, like a spinal column with ribs. You can see that as like the built lighthouse. And then Nun is like this light, this meaning, it's like, but Yahusha said, I'm the vine, you're the branches, and you are to bear fruit. So I could see the Psalmic as, well, there's the center, that's the trunk, and certainly has 3 branches coming out of both sides. And the branches, when they got cups of oil and they're lit, well, there's bearing fruit of light. And lining up with the day of trumpets, the trumpet itself is the engineered structure which produces the fruit of the emanated sound. So I can see the equivalence there with Yom Teruah, with the menorah, with the Psalmic. But what's kuf? So if I'm going to go back to that pattern I was just talking about and saying, okay, the concept that Yahuah said, the word that I set forth from my mouth won't return void. It'll accomplish what I set it forth to do. If YHUShO is that word that he sets forth from his mouth and he's going to accomplish, in order for him to accomplish it, he has to go through this death, the crucifixion. So right here, like this picture has a circle with a square with a red cow's head with a white eye and a cross. And it says red heifer, and then it says Gimel Ayin Lamed, Gimel Tav Hey Hey. Well, this area here off to the right side of that picture, I now break down the spelling of that. Now, I don't know how that word was necessarily spelled in Latin or Greek, or maybe even in Hebrew, but if I try to pronounce it, it's Golgotha. Golgotha, hey, that's where Yeshua was crucified. And it says red heifer. This is a blend of a half a dozen things or so. Golgotha is called the place of the skull. What's the skull? The head. Well, there's a red skull of a cow. What's the red heifer? Well, the heifer is a female bovine creature, so it's red because it didn't have any white or black hairs, and it was a special breed of red heifer. So what's the big deal? It was not a sin sacrifice. They would get a red heifer, they'd burn it to ash, and then they'd mix it with water and use that as at least a symbol of washing or cleansing or decontaminating someone who had been in contact with the dead. If you were burying bodies, somebody in your house had died, you had to wait a certain, was it a week or a month or something, that you were called unclean. You have the ashes of the red heifer. Well, one way to make soap is use lye, which you get from burning animal carcass, getting fat. So what I'm saying is I don't know the details, but I know that from burning an animal, you can get soap, which will kill bad germs. Is that what that was about? Well, they didn't bathe in a bath of that. The high priest sprinkled some on him, and so is that a symbolic cleansing? I'm not sure, but at least that's the point of the red heifer. So I've heard people say recently, them crazy Jews, they want to kill a red heifer because the death of Jesus wasn't enough to cleanse you from your sins. That had nothing to do with it. The red heifer is not a sin sacrifice. The reason why they're trying to get some red heifer so that they can remake the articles of the temple is because you had to basically anoint the articles of the temple with the red heifer. It had nothing to do with a sin sacrifice that's usurping the role of Jesus. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make the point that when you listen to science or history or religious reasoning, or you even see on the internet somebody saying, hey, here's how you pronounce the word ani, and they spell it wrong, you got to expect to be deceived right down the whole gamut. From the day you're born, you're going to be lied to, deceived, either unintentionally or on purpose. Somebody's going to try to get advantage of you, whether it's the devil or your chums, your classmates, or your spouse, or somebody, your employer. And the only place to find sanity, Shafah Kadesh, the sacred tongue, the language. It's the only place of sanity. Golgotha, regardless of how you spell it. But then I have broken down here, looking from the dictionary. Well, starts over here on the right. Gimel Ayin Lamed means to rinse, scald, purify, cleanse, discharge, vomit, disgust, loathing, revulsion, abomination, abhorred, and rejected. So not only is it, it's to cleanse, what it's telling you what it's cleansing, all the rotten, wrong stuff. That's gall. Gimel Aleph Lamed. Aleph, or Gimel Ayin Lamed. Ayin Lamed is a word that's quite often hyphenated, and it's a yoke. It means this connected to that. On, above, at, concerning, because of, together with, or a yoke. And then ayin lamed gimel. So if it was gal, al, alag means stammering or stuttering. And then lamed gimel is a liquid measure, like how much blood did he pour out? Gimel tav, wine. Goliath was from a place called Gath, Gath, which was a Canaanite Philistine city. It's spelled Gimel Tav. That's the word. Wine press, pit, cistern, period of the great pressing. So when he was at the, when Yeshua was at the place of, gosh, what's the word? It wasn't Golgotha. The Golgotha was where he's put, but he was right before he was arrested. He was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's the word. Geth is that word goth, which is a wine press. So he was sitting there. He was thinking. He knew what was about to happen, and it said he was sweating blood. It was getting pressed out of him with the stress. That's the same as Golgotha, Gethsemane. And then Tav, hey, astonished, amazed, dumbfounded, to meditate, to report, to smell, to examine. It's like, take the time to sit there and look at what's happening here. And then you can sit and analyze and go through all the little pieces and all the other little factors and look at all the letters. That's what this picture is about. And the other thing here is that, well, there's a cross and there's a circle, and it's like, well, the circle basically describes a zone, and the square is like, well, there's an altar. The altars or barbecues nowadays are basically round, but they made the grills basically square, and there's horns on the altar like this is drawn. But see, this is the upside down scientific symbol of female. Happens to be a circle with a cross. Why? Well, because people talk about the sacred feminine, the Gaia, the earth goddess. And there's a whole mentality about this. And this is basically turning that whole thing upside down. That's the symbolism there. And the white eye is basically, that's a dead head of the cow. All I'm saying is that it's interesting to see that Yeshua was crucified outside the gate. That was where the red heifer sacrifice was applied to those in contact with the dead. Those who were abominated by unknowing. They were in the dark. They had no idea what they were doing, or they did it on purpose. But anyone who comes to him and say, would you please cleanse me? They come to the one who was Zioned outside the Het, and then the phrase Het Yod being my sin sacrifice takes my foul condition and gives me in exchange, its pristine, cleansed position, you might say. Okay, so what I'm saying is that's the purpose of this red heifer sacrifice and what these words all have to be. And it's just a matter of noticing that in the spelling of the words, it's not just, oh, that's the name of the place. But if you stop and look at the spelling of words and look in the dictionary, that's the way this language works. And that's the way we've been conducting this entire study for all these words. And I just left one place here on the chart as a model example for what you can do with everything. But it would be way too much to write it out with too many more words. But this is one place where I put that model of the nature of the study. Okay, so the point is that if he came down to conduct a work, and if the work that he conducted is now within this realm between the Het and the Zadi, Kuf lining up with the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. Well, the pillar of fire is just like this thing which illuminates the smoke, the covering, but it's this shape of the smoke drifting out over and the fire being this straight. That's kind of like the question mark and kind of like the exclamation point. And they were right over the tabernacle. If you look real close, you'll see that there's the picture of the Mishkan fence, and specifically it was over the Ark of the Covenant. But If I were to say, he came down to do this, why? He said, I've only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Well, that means he's the shepherd and he's looking for his lost sheep. Now, he did say, I have others of a different flock that you don't know about. Was that the Gentiles or was that the northern kingdom compared to the southern kingdom? Either way, he was talking to some people, the Jews, and he's saying, I've come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, you have to know something about the Old Testament where it says the entire unity of the 12 tribes was called the house of Israel, but a number of places, a few, at least a half a dozen places, he says the northern kingdom, the lost 10 tribes, are referred to as the house of Israel, and the southern kingdom is known as the house of Judah, Yahudah. That's scriptural. House of Israel, house of Yahudah. The house of Israel was also known as Ephraim, which is the principal tribe. Ephraim and Manasseh were to the two sons of Joseph. He had an Egyptian wife. She was the priest's daughter. So there's a blended genetic of DNA right there brought into the family, as well as the fact that the two women that were the wives of Jacob, that were the mothers of these 12 children, Rachel and Leah were two, but they each had handmaids. What nationality were they? Well, nobody knows. So what race were they? Were they necessarily black or white or red or yellow, or who knows what they were? You could have a blend of all the nations of the earth within those four women, and then considering the mother, the Egyptian mother of, who was the priest married to? We don't know anything about that. So personally, I don't think that the DNA of the races has anything to do with anything, for whatever that's worth. But my point is that if you could read in the first 7 letters, the word that goes forth from my mouth won't return voice, it'll accomplish what it's set forth to do. And let's look at the block. What he's going to do is between the het and the zadi. So then after this, resh, I could see the kuf is like this lighthouse. Well, if he came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, how'd they get lost? Well, like we read in Deuteronomy 30 and like we read in Ezekiel 36 and a whole bunch of other places, they didn't care about what Yahweh said. That's how they got lost. They wouldn't listen to the Torah. Going back into Proverbs, Proverbs 28, verse 6, good, tov, reshin, poor. Hey, Vav Lamed Kaf, he who walks betamu, in perfection, mem, ayin kufshin, away from crooked, distorted, complicated, perverted, stubborn, obstinate, dalit rich, kaf, yod mem, ways, vav hey, vav aleph, he, the it, the same one, ayin shin yod resh, wealthy. So here, this one verse, he says, a poor man who walks perfectly away from distortion. Well, you read the other verses in here, and it's talking about the way of the Torah, like Ezekiel 20, is good and right. And if you walk according to what the Torah says, that's considered tav mem, perfect. But no man is walking his ways. Those are bad laws nobody can live by. No, that's what we're told. But the word perfect, you see, doesn't necessarily mean this model of perfection, which is unattainable. Perfect means do what we're told to do. Is perfection a slippery sliding scale, or is perfection an absolute? Well, what is tav mem? The stones that were put into the breastplate of the high priest were Urim and Tumim. Well, the word or is light, so they were supposed to somehow be translucent. Well, some of them were opaque. Were they all supposed to be translucent varieties, even though that particular stone we think of as opaque can't transmit light? But they're all supposed to be tumim. Well, perfect. How do you find the perfect specimen of a certain stone? It's a stone. It's made on earth. It's an earth thing. If perfection, see, it's all how you define the words. If I say perfection can only be defined as heavenly, unattainable quality of absolute no flaw, is that perfect with an earth consideration? But if I can say tav mem, translated perfect, well, there's none perfect, there's none righteous. No, that's a doctrine. Yeah, but it's quoting a verse, but it's quoting the translation of a verse. Didn't it say that John the Baptist's parents were perfect? Tav mem? So what I'm saying is, see, if you choose to translate these words where you have excuses and everything's unattainable, okay, believe whatever you want. But if we believe that what he told us was mistranslated, or the understanding we have can't be calculated right, because what we have, like I said in the first hour, it wasn't until about 1000 AD that anybody tried to figure out, hey, what do these words really mean? And nobody knows how they're really pronounced, and nobody knows what the letters really represent, because they're looking at phonetic comparisons of consonants, and they're not looking at the Mishkan pattern. So we now have a vantage because we see Yahusha in these letters, and because we have his Ruach HaKodesh, and because we can see the ironing of the Tav correlated to the ironing of the Dalet. This is a perspective which Moshe didn't even have. This is a perspective of seeing this language, which I personally think is unprecedented, which nobody possibly has ever had other than, well, here we are. In which case, this kuf, this overview is like, that's the lighthouse. This is this lighthouse of saying he's going to accomplish this so that the man, Adam, the standard Vav man, who is trying to become the Resh man, and then Sheen, when he's put to the test of inspected, tested, proven to be true, then the mission is accomplished. Well, how did Yeshua accomplish the mission? If he came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, it's because they let go of the Torah. Kaf Lamed represents the Torah. That's home. He came to bring his people home. Therefore, any Jesus Christ figure that says the Torah doesn't matter is a fake that's going to take them to a different home. Not home, it'll be another jail, because the reason everybody got in trouble was for not walking in Yahuah's ways. That's what he has said again and again, repeatedly, forcefully. I involved Dalet is that word that David was talking so much about in that whole study of Psalm 119 we did. But Mem Nun lines up with you gotta wanna. It's the source of the original problem. Heart and soul wanting to hear his voice and do what he said and be his people. Heart and soul, with all your heart and all your soul. You could be at the task lackadaisically, or I have to because I'm going to school and bar mitzvah, I got to learn these things. If that's all Kaf Lamed, if you have no heart and soul, you're not going to be able to produce and become the Resh that the objective was. If Samik Ayin Pei is, if Samik is, I'm the vine, you're the branches, just bear the fruit I told you to bear. Just do what I said to do. That's just doing so. Just bear the fruit. What are the fruits? Love your neighbors yourself. Live Yahweh your Elohim. Do mishpat. And then what's the ayin? The analysis, the ponder, the study, the intellect. It's very much weigh carefully, balance, measure, scrutiny. It's very much intellectual. And I've heard people say that, oh, no, that's no part of anything. It's like, I disagree. It's the meaning of the letter. And what's pay? If you say, well, pay lines up with Sukkot, pay lines up with the beatitude of blessed are the pure in heart. That has to do with how do you deal with one another? Love your neighbor. So you can look at Samik Ayin Pei is all, especially if you look at the Galatians 5:22 for the fruits of the Spirit, is as a society, dealing with your parents, dealing with your neighbor, dealing with even your enemies, dealing with other people on the face of the earth. Samach, and Pei, Micah 6:8. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your Elohim, which is gosh, where is it? I know it's one of these here. Why don't I see it? Well, anyway, here, right in this line here. On this side, it says, here's his Micah 6. And in this place, it says, let me explain this line here. Here it says, Nod, land of wandering and searching. Well, this is outside in the darkness. And inside here, in the blue section, it says, choose life, light shines, reign of heaven, Eden, I redeemed you from bondage. So you go back to the Garden of Eden, and there's an interesting pattern that models the Mishkan. If you take Eden as being like the area of the Mishkan itself, like this fenced area called Eden. The word Eden is where in English we get the word hedonism, which literally means everything is wonderful, everything is great, everything is good. Then I could say, well, we'll talk about the Garden of Eden in just a second, but if I say the same model means this is the kingdom of heaven, and the four-colored door, Yod Vav He, blue, purple, red, white, and you're out here in the darkness of illiteracy and ignorance, and you say, well, you're in the land of death, you need to choose life. So to say to get into the kingdom, you need to choose life. That's the action. It talks about that, I think it's in Deuteronomy 6. The light shines because the pillar of fire over the white linen fence, you can picture the fence like a lampshade glowing, everything else is dark all around. The reign of heaven. The reign of the heaven is this stuff that's in here, which is the Moedim and the Shabbat, which means that if you want to be of our Father who art in heaven, our Father who reigns in the heavens, even in the Lord's Prayer, which is the where did I put that? Right here, a couple lines above it. This is the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6, prayer of Yahuah, of Yeshua. What I'm saying is that you put all these concepts together, and that fits this pattern. I put before you life and death, blessing and cursing. I urge you to choose life. That's what Moshe said. That's like, I'm standing in here in the darkness, choose to enter. This is the place of light. That's the place of darkness. This is the reign of heaven. Everywhere else is not. This is the Garden of Eden, of everything wonderful and delightful and pleasant. Everywhere else is the house of bondage and slavery and death. Pretty clear distinction, like between Zion and Het. But this is Het, Tet, and Yod. So if this is the garden of, if this is Eden, then it says in Genesis 2, I believe it was, there's a place in Eden, which is the garden. Well, that's like the covered place, the tent. That's where the Garden of Eden was. But outside in just Eden, there was a place of the headwaters of 4 rivers, which is basically lined up with the laver. And once they got kicked out of the garden, they had to go back to where they were taken from, the soil in Eden, and they had to plow the ground. Well, that's like the lines on the barbecue grill, still in Eden. But when Cain killed Abel, he was kicked out, banished from Eden, and he went to the land of Nod, which is translated wandering. That's what it talks about here. And if you look at the word for Nod in Nun Dalet or Nun Vav Dalet, it has to do also with searching. It's like, I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. But you could say, well, that's a Hebrew word, nod. Yeah, but when you go into sleep, you're nodding off. Your head maybe nods, you fall asleep. You go into your dream world. I'm just noticing correlations of the English words with the Hebrew picture concepts. Inside the garden, they could eat whatever they wanted. That's kind of basically like the table of showbread. They had communication with Elohim. That's like the altar of incense, the prayers of the saints. There was a tree of life. Basically, there was a tree in the middle. You could say, well, the set apart place where you're not allowed to go, maybe that was kind of like where the Ark of the Covenant is, where is the tree of life. It's speculation. I'm just looking at the pattern. I'm saying, if I said, oh, well, no, the tree that they weren't supposed to eat of, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, well, that would have been somewhere else. But he said that's in the center of the garden. But then there's this place called the tree of life. So I can imagine, I can ponder, I can think about this and say, well, the menorah is kind of like the tree of life. And the place that you're not supposed to go, like the Ark of the Covenant, was only the high priest, only if he was qualified, clean, and only once a year. And then he was supposed to put, that's kind of like this symbolic picture, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And anybody who profanes that, that's it, you're dead. The high priest would occasionally die in there, and the day of Yom Kippur. I'm just saying, you can picture the layout of the Garden of Eden also fitting this pattern. That's a curious thing. And then the angels, they call them seraphim, flaming angels, or angels with a flaming sword, guarding it so that nobody can get back into Eden, kind of like the picture of the Kuf. The point is, if you look back at this, the place of the Zodi being the Ark of the Covenant, whether it lines up with the tree of knowledge of good and evil that you're not supposed to eat, or whether it's the tree of life, it's a one particular noteworthy thing. For Yeshua to be crucified and resurrect, that's a picture of the Zodi, a sprout, a blossom. Pei Zodi it means open mouth. It also means explode. So for the language to come back is like, that is Pei Zodi. It's a picture of Pei Zodi. For Yeshua to come back from the dead is absolutely Pei Zodi. The grave opened up, Pei and Zodi, spectacular, restored life. That's the same picture as Israel coming back out of the curse, out of the dispersion, the diaspora, the lost 10 tribes coming back home. Not just to the promised land, to the Torah, home, to the Torah. So anybody who says, I don't need to come back home to the Torah, I'm home because Jesus let me in to the Father's house. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It might be real, it might be true, they can believe that, and I hope for their sake it's true. But if they don't want to be Israel, see, he never compromised his terms of what it means to be Israel. You, Israel, I have fashioned for myself. You're my treasure. Oh, I'm going to let a bunch of other people in heaven also. Okay, fine. But to be Israel is like, what are the terms and conditions of being Israel? That's what this is about. So to have an argument with other believers of other faiths, other concepts, and saying, you're wrong, you're going to burn in hell. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you better hope you're right, that you're not going to burn in hell. The question is, like with the Sheen, what's the great divide? Is the great divide either you're Israel or nothing, or is it, see, the word het zodi is arrow, or that sagittal, Sagittarius, same concept, where you have something cut in half. Okay, it's either this side or that side. But that same word, het zodi, can also mean numerous divisions. Like going down the street, a freeway is not just cut down the middle, so traffic on both directions, but you can have 5 lanes on this side, or 20 lanes on this side, and 20 lanes on that side. It's the concept of being partitioned. So the idea is that if Kuf is a separation, if Sheen is a separation, oh, wait a minute, every one of these letters is some type of separation. Connected or not, of him or not, hey, do you choose the light or not? And it's just like, if I were to sit here and try to start making, well, I'm going to now see if I can classify a bunch of rules that everybody has to do certain things if they want to get really saved, that's just making up doctrines. I don't care about that. The question is, what did he come to do? And if I'm in control of, I gotta wanna believe and act as if the instructions were true. Yes, count your chickens before they hatch. That's a little kind of a joke. There's a saying, I don't know if it's in other countries or what, but there's a saying that says, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Hey, but they're eggs, and I know they're fertile, and I know there's a chicken in there, and so if I'm going to count on it, yeah, but they may not hatch, something may go wrong. You have chickens, you know what that's about. And so there's an old saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. So why did I say, yes, do count them? It's because the word for count is sefer. And the word for chicken in Hebrew, well, I'm not sure what that word is, but people usually write the het as a CH. So chicken could be written with English letters, CHIKN, chikan. Well, KN is taf nun, which means yes. CHI, well, that's het yod, which means life. That means yes, life. That means true life. That means I'm actually granted eternal life. But the word sefer is translated as count. So count kai khan, sefer, true life. Count your chickens. Well, what's the word sefer mean? It's over here. Count, number, tell, narrate, to cut shape of hair, letter, document, cipher, the figure. In other words, to pull all this together, severing true life can be read as, yeah, I'm counting chickens. It's a joke. It's a play on words, blending the languages. Just for what that's worth. If the one who's trying to sefer where life is and says, okay, I got to get to the Tav, it's like, no, that's not really the goal. I mean, that's the last letter. It could be seen as a target, but the goal is for you to become Resh. Oh, how do I become Resh? But see, if I'm looking at these letters, Resh is the after status. If Kuf means after this, the status of me doing Samik I and Pei, like this triangle here, focusing at Zadi. So, in the Aleph-BEIT song, Zadi stands alone, though all Israel shall become. Only Yahusha was resurrected from the dead in that regard, but yet we are all going to rise from the dead. Only Yahusha was called the righteous one, but yet we're all called to be righteous like him in his train, as they say, or in his manner, walking just as he did. So Yahusha is the one preeminent icon, archetype, figurehead that we should all be modeled like. So our objective is looking at him in the true capacity, not as, see, the word Bet Gimel Dalet means in disguise. Hey, Vav Zion, behold this one. So these are almost like opposite of each other. And again, when he said to his disciples, hey, who do people say I am? He's just asking, hey, what's the phrase, like, what's the scuttlebutt going on out there? Yeah. Some people think you're actually John the Baptist. Didn't they see John the Baptist baptizing me? Me and him aren't the same guy. Yeah, well, stuff gets lost in translation. Stories get mixed up. Some people think you're John the Baptist. Well, some people think you're Elijah the prophet. Well, what's he supposed to do? What does that mean? And it's like, you see, there's all these distorted stories, whether it's history, whether it's doctrine, whether it's translation. Yeah, but who do you guys say I am? Who do you think I am? And Peter said, well, we're told Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. But is that Christian doctrine with English words stuck into Aramaic or Greek, and it's like, I don't know what it is, but if what he said is, you are the word, Christos, Mashiach, you are the manifestation of the, see the word son, S-O-N, is Bana, Bet Nun, but Bet Nun Hey Bana, Banaha, is construct. You are the construct state of the word of our Elohim. Is that what he said? Are you going to write that in English? And Yahuah said to him, the Ruach must have told you that, because no way you could have figured that out. In other words, he was saying, I've got such a good disguise, you couldn't have seen through my disguise. So it must have been the Ruach gave you that picture of comprehension, that you can fathom it, you can perceive it. Because otherwise, what did he mean by son of the living God? You are the manifest of you're the life from our Elohim, Yahweh Zavot, the Elohim of Israel. It's manifested in this human form. Is that what he was saying? See, again, the only way for me to know what any of these guys said that were told is to say, how do I cut through the doctrine like it was some thick sludge, or the historical or the translational value, and say, where do I get back to what was really being said? It's all right here. Simple and clean and clear. So the mission is to say, let's look at him. Let's look at Yahusha resurrected. And the word Zadi means righteous. What's righteous mean? As a defined word, righteous is doing what Yahweh said and not doing what he said not to do. So therefore, if Yeshua said, hey, I can do anything I want because I'm the Lord of the Sabbath, so you can go ahead and work and you can go and eat the stuff that he said not to eat, it's simply not logical, not true. And so I don't believe it. For again, to go back to what I said in the beginning, for Klein's to say, Klein Dictionary, no one knows what the words actually mean. But the Greek concept of etymos is that which is, using words in their true sense. I can go back and say, that's exactly what this Mishkan pattern is. And rather than just leaving it something to study, he said here, which is this interesting, somehow multi-dimensions converging to actually keep the Moedim, to actually observe the Moedim, participate in the function of the Passover meal, eating unleavened bread for 7 days. And somebody says, Jesus did it all for me. It's like, you're missing the point. You're actually becoming one with the word, one with the instruction, one with the Father's heart, one with Yahusha by doing these Moedim, by resting on the Sabbath day. To say that this idea of seeing this hasn't been articulated that I've ever heard, or that I've ever seen recorded in history or anybody else's teachings, is validated. 3 voices. I said once before, it's like, this is really great. If I could hire 3 preeminent scholars with good reputation to prove what I'm saying, you got Michael Brown, Michael Heiser, who's now deceased, and Miles Jones. So I'm going to call them the M&M boys. Michael, and Miles. And they have all said, this stuff, don't believe it. No one has ever validated this. This is not the way to address the language and see the meaning of words and letters. Thank you, boys. You've now proven that Yahuah has kept this understanding obfuscated, under wraps, squelched for all these 6,000 years. No one has ever regarded this stuff. Thank you. That means to be able to see the essence, the ironing the tav, the value of each letter, correlated to Yahusha being the door, and the two, that him being the door of validating the letters, and the letters themselves correlated to the Moedim, validate him as being Mashiach, is this perfect, this beautiful catch-22, which can't be broken. That yoke can't be broken. The yoke between Ayin Dalet and Ayin Tav. So just as a few synonyms of the word unique, this understanding: innovative, pioneer, avant-garde, revolutionary, groundbreaking, trailblazing, unorthodox, visionary, radical, novel, unprecedented, progressive, experimental, cutting edge, and essentially uncleric. If cleric means clerk, clergy, clerical, keeping everything right where the letters belongs, just right where we've all organized them, this is totally uncleric. Therefore, Moshe could not have written any other letters other than these. So somehow, if the Hebrew language was never written before, if Hugh Ross is correct, then Moshe had to figure out how to write the Hebrew language. And I would say it would have to be after the burning bush and before Mount Sinai, where he was handed, because he was told to write him 7 chapters before he was handed the tables of stone. So he didn't copy what Yahuah wrote with his finger. Moshe had to somehow figure this out. And so there's a group called the Wycliffe Bible Translators. For example, they've translated a couple hundred languages. You go to a place like there was a language in Nigeria called Iziri. In my understanding, it was a commercial trade language, but never written. So they go there and they find people and they say, listen, let me hear every phonetic sound you guys make in your language. And let's say they made 22 phonetic consonantal sounds. And so then they'll write a little shape of each one of those sounds. And then, so let me hear you speak. And they notice how many vowels. So vowels are plugged in. A, E, I, O, U. Letter Y, perhaps. Sound of the W, perhaps. But A, E, I, O, and U are basically the 5 vowels that the Semitic languages use. And then it's a matter of saying, okay, what's the word for dog? Here, I'm going to write that down, and I'll write it with those lifts. What's the word for tree? Write that down. Now you have a written language. It's a pretty simple mechanical operation. But some languages, still to this day, are not written. In Hebrew, I'm just saying logically, in my thinking, Hebrew could easily have been sustained since the days of Adam all the way up to Moshe and never written. Now, people think that Enoch wrote. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. People think that Methuselah gave some writings to Abraham. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But at least 20 chapters before Yahweh writes with his own finger, Moshe was told, write these words. And because every word that we have in the Torah is every word that is composed of these 22, the 5 Sophite letters, which are these 5 here, are different, are extra, are supplemental, their own alphabet. They don't change the meaning. They don't change the placement. Just they show up at the end of a word, like a capital letter in English. These show up at the end of the word in Hebrew. Moshe had to have at his disposal these 22. And if he looked at the Nun and the Samech, hey, if he was given the insight, the same way Daniel was given the insight of how to change it and hide it, Moshe would have had the mind of how to see the shape and the meaning of each letter. Sheep and at least the shape and the meaning, or at least the pronunciation, that nooning of each letter. I don't know that he would have seen Yahusha, but the fact that we have here, I said this earlier, I'll say it again, the fact that we have here seeing the word ruach means path, it means expanse, it means breath, air, ventilation. The expanse between Aleph and Tav is these 20 letters. So I could say this is the ruach sacred, kadosh. This is the Ruach HaKodesh, is understanding these 22 letters. Because the word also means mind and disposition and will. And if this was generated from our Heavenly Father, then this 22-letter alphabet is the Ruach HaKodesh. Now you can say, well, you also have another Ruach HaKodesh, a part of the Trinity. It's like, we're looking at definitions of words compared to doctrine, compared to the meaning of a word in the essence of the truth of its use, like what Kleins was talking about. So here's another matter then. You could say, well, how are we supposed to then make use of the truth? Well, here's an interesting thing. Elohim makes Adam in his own image, fit to comprehend this stuff. Adam gets lost because he doesn't want to regard the Torah. So he goes insane, distorted, perverted, twisted, corrupted. And then he makes AI after his own likeness. And AI takes Adam's ways, because Adam programmed the AI, and he feeds back to Adam, like what Harari was saying, within a couple months of now, anything you read everywhere is going to be generated by AI. You won't even be able to find what somebody wrote. So AI feeds back to Adam, and Adam feeds back into the computer, and then you get what I would call this death spiral. How do you get out of it? That's this position right here. The only way to get out of it is, what did Yahuah say? And because what Yahuah said is fixed on these Moedim, I believe that what he did was said, Israel, I'm going to make a law, a command, that you do the important thing that'll save you. So if you do what I say, you'll automatically get saved from your peril, from your desperate situation, not only eternal, but the mortal circumstances. Just start doing what I said to do. The health, the rigors of health, what you eat, what you don't eat, how you walk, how you think, how you behave, all that, he made a law so that when we obey the law, we're automatically doing the healthy things. That's one way to look at it. And then we're told, no, to do that is bad laws that nobody can live by. It's like, no, it's not. It's the opposite of that. Why are we paying attention to that? Do we want to be deceived? Do we want to be ill? Do we want to be confused? Well, then why don't we just do what he said? Well, because we were told that what he said doesn't matter. It's like, you'd rather believe that? If nothing exists, go back to what I was saying in the beginning, except what your brain chooses to hold on to, and in the quantum field, it's like, well, nothing is real until you choose to believe it, and then that's what makes it real. Okay, let's just push that to a place of saying, why don't we just choose to believe that what Yahuah said is true and real? Why don't we choose to believe that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he? Not only so is he, so is the reality that he finds himself in the environment of. Why don't we believe that if Yahuah said in Ezekiel 20, walk in my ways and you will live? Okay, why don't we do that? No, what he meant, no, I'm not going to listen to that then. See, so my life becomes my challenge to figure out what Yahuah said so I can believe it. And then if I say, well, if everything Yahuah said is what happens, where's the first example of that? Well, I can say the first example of Aleph becoming Tav, as I've said, so shall it be. The first time ALEF-TAV was used is in Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim, 3 words. ALEF-TAV, et pronounced, Hashemayim va'et. Now it's hyphenated, so it's not exactly the same as the standalone ALEF-TAV. Ha-eretz, the earth. 7 words. The 4th one right in the middle is ALEF-TAV, kind of like a picture of the menorah. The one right in the middle is ALEF-TAV. Symbolism, Yeshua is the servant candle, what's called the chemish, or the word for sun, sun. They light the center candle. It's used to light the other candles on the menorah, just symbolic, ritual, traditional, just to say all this stuff is loaded in. Yeah, but what does ALEF-TAV mean? Well, they tell us nobody knows what ALEF-TAV means. Yeah, but if ALEF-TAV can be that which goes out of my mouth will accomplish what I set it forth to do, it won't return void. Then that's what ALEF-TAV means. But it has to follow this track. And if it has to follow this track, then if we get lost and we want to be found by him to return us to the Father's house, and the word house means taught, trained, and domesticated, that's what the Torah is. They lied to us about what the Torah is. Bad laws of punishment that no man can live by, only for the Jews. No, it's not. It's the Father's heart expressed as words that we should walk in and do, like keeping the Sabbath day in the Moedim. Do you want to retain your sanity, or do you want to be overlorded by our enemies? To me, it's just that simple. Here's another interesting thing to consider. In Numbers 6, verses 24 to 26, there's this thing called the Aaronic benediction. And Yahuah says, Moshe, call Aharon, tell him and his sons, this is how you bless my children of Israel. Say to them, and then he tells them, Ivarekaka Yahuah va'ishmereka. Ya'er Yahuah panav. Well, here, let me read it exactly here. Number 6, 24 to 26. I'll show you something in particular. So the question is, have you ever heard anybody say these words? Have you ever heard somebody tell you what Yahweh said to say? Every time I've heard anybody say anything, they always take out his name and replace it with either the Lord or Hashem or Adonai. But if you look at verse 22, it says, Vayadber Yahweh al Moshe lamer. Okay, so this is the word of Yahuah toward Moshe saying, Deber el Aharon, speak to Aharon, Va'el Beniu, his son, lamer ka ta baruku. This is kaf hey, which is to say like this. The word this isn't there, but like Zion hey is this, kaf hey is Kaf means like as a prefix. So I'm saying if you look at this, say, boy, I don't know these words. It's like Kaf and hey. Kaf is the open hand, and hey is to express or reveal. This here is my open hand. Kaf noon is the word yes. Hey noon is the word for behold. Hey aleph is here. So I'm saying if you know these letters, even if you don't know Hebrew, even if you think you're illiterate, you can look at this and understand what's being said. Baruch, Bet Resh Kaf is the word translated blessing. ALEF-TAV, Bnei Israel, my children of Israel, Amer Lahem, say to them. Now here it is. Ivarekaka, Yahuah, Va'ishmereka. So Yod is the prefix. Baruch, bless, is the root 3-letter word, and then Kaf is the suffix. So Kaf means you, Yod means he will. So he will bless you? Well, it's saying he will bless you, or is it saying, hey, Yahweh, please do the blessing upon this guy? So what's the effect of that Yod prefix and the Kaf suffix? Kaf suffix makes it Yod. Yod, is that saying he will, or is that asking him to? I've seen both translations. Yahuah, his name is mentioned, Va'ishamer. Well, that's the word shamar. And remember, he says in Proverbs 28, verse 9 there, the man who turns his ear from shema'ing the Torah, even so, his prayer is an abomination. His prayer? The word is tefillah. Well, tav pei lamed hey, pei lamed aleph is the word paleo, wonderful, marvelous. So you could say that the prayer of asking for intervention is abominated, is idolatry. He says in Proverbs, if you will not listen to Yahuwah's Torah, You're praying to an idolatrous God. It's not Yahweh's Avot. Because to know Yahweh's Avot, you have to know him by his Torah and the fact that he gave us his Torah. Otherwise, it's not him. And in his Torah, was telling us not to work on the Sabbath day and to keep these Moedim. So something about these Moedim, they're so critical, they're so important because it identifies him as, by identity and intent and bejewelment, the testimony of his ornamentation, of his radiance emanating what's in these Moedim. And for us to say, that's the guy we're listening to, that's the one we're guarding his words, so now we can ask him to guard us. And the blessing of life, you look in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28, was for those who walk in his ways and listen to his voice. And if you don't listen to his voice and don't walk in his ways, yet you're calling on him to bless you, it's not him. And you're actually profaning him by not listening to what he said about that matter. But if you want to believe you're a good Christian bride of Christ and get life, eternal life, hope for your sake it's true, but I don't see that being the same. Just say it. And then he says, Ya'ar, Yod Aleph Resh, Aleph-Vav Resh is light. Aleph Resh is I will resh. There's something, is that the lighthouse? I will, it's translated, illuminate his countenance. Ya'ar Yahweh Panav Aleka, his countenance. Panav is the word for his face. Ayin Lamed Yod Kaf is in your direction. Vayakaneka, well, Chetnun is grace. So may he Aleph Resh his face upon you in your direction and give you grace. See that word Kaneka, there was grace ever since back in the days of Numbers. But if you don't know what this is and you don't know how to get there from here, what are you hoping for? Listen, I'm going to translate the word grace for myself and say, I want all your stuff for free because Jesus died on the cross. Is that grace? That might be doctrine, but is that what he means by it? Or if he says, because for you guys to become the ones that I want, which is why Yahushua came to go through all this, to bring you back home with a changed heart so that you'll walk in my ways, and I'll see you as this, so that you receive my grace? Is it so that, or is the fact that he makes a provision for this to happen, is that the offering of the grace itself? I'm willing to forgive all your insanity, your stupidity, your foolishness, your blindness and ignorance, and your bad heart, and your just wayward shenanigans. I'm willing to forgive all that. If you come home, gosh, how does this work? Yeshua Yahuah Panav Aleka. Translated, may Yahweh lift his countenance to you. Lift his countenance. The word is Yod Shin Aleph. Well, NASA, Nun Shin Aleph is to lift up. But Shin Aleph and Shin Vav Aleph means bring to nothing. That's why in the 10 Commandments, he says, don't, any man that brings his name to nothing, then he'll be basically eliminated. So the Yod prefix means he will. The Nun prefix means the active of doing, but Shin Aleph means to pick up and carry. How does he pick up and lift his countenance to you? See, it doesn't make any sense. But if I say Shin Aleph, Shin is that which is been purified and refined. Aleph, is that the truth? Is something about allowing us to see the pure truth of his face toward you. May he lift up his countenance. See, like I said in the beginning, the people that came up with these translations compared the letters to other languages, and they gave us definitions. They were guessing, and some Jews in North Africa and Spain back in 1000 AD thought that this was pretty close. So that's what they gave us. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the whole picture of what it is. But if you look at Shin Aleph, and then to look at the word his face, Pei Nun Yod Vav. Vav means his, but Paneh, Pei Nun means variety, sort, type, kind. So that's his stuff. In other words, what's his opinion of what these letters mean, being his personal self-expression, but also the word pan means to be disengaged, to be on vacation, to be a bachelor. Like, I don't care about that right now. I'm unconcerned. And if you read the book, the Song of Moses in the end of Deuteronomy, he says, you guys have ticked me off so bad, I'm out of here. I'm just going to leave and see how long it takes you to figure out. I'm not paying attention. I'm not answering your prayers. I'm not engaged with your concerns, because you got to be concerned with my concerns if you want me concerned with your concerns. That's the terms of the covenant. That's what he said. But that's not what we were told. And the Jews have no obligation to give us, who are not a Jew, a Gentile, a Goyim, a Christian, an infidel, a pagan heretic. They got no obligation to give us the truth. So they can write whatever they want to write in this English. And if those Jews don't find the effort to know what these words mean, then they can't even blame each other. I'm just saying, it's up to you to decide for yourself, what do these words mean? And if I can say, may he Shin Aleph his face, then he should pick up his face and look in my direction. Concern himself with my concerns. And place upon you shalom. What's shalom? Peace. Everything working good. It's that place where you finally realize, I'm accepted. I am home. It's like that movie, Saving Private Ryan, where it's like, am I a good man? I have to hear those words. Well done, good and faithful servant. Until I hear those words, it's only speculation, conjecture, faith, belief, hope. But when he finally says those words, but you see, my sense at this point in time in my life, to see these letters, I see them as absolutely being Yahweh's Avot, the Elohim of Israel. There's no question. And then, and the kicker of the whole thing is Yahweh's Avot. I keep mentioning that because that's what he keeps saying his name is, Yahweh's Avot. Zadi Bet, ALEF-TAV. Zadi Bet. Yod Zadi Bet, Nun Zadi Bet. Look at those words in the dictionary. It means to place, to put, to position, to establish, to institutionalize. An ALEF-BEIT-TAV is a letter of the alphabet. It's a sign, it's a symbol, it's an oath. It's the stipulations by oath. Synonym with the word debar, Dalet Bet Resh. Zadi Bet Aleph is army. So they'll say, oh, well, he's the master of legions, the captain of armies, angel armies, armies of his saints. Jesus in the sky with angels. It's like, okay, you could say that's a picture of Yahweh's Avot. He who has the armies, because Zadi Bet Aleph means armies, because there's more than one way to read the word. But Zadi is the resurrected, flourishing. Bet is the house. Vav-Tav is the plural. But the word house is also taught, trained, and domesticated. To be of his house. So I could say to resurrect the terms according to the letters of what it means to be of his house. That's who Israel's supposed to be. That's the meaning of the word Zavot. For Yeshua to resurrect out of the grave bodily Zadi Bet. Bet Aleph is to arrive. Zaidi Bet Aleph Vav Tav, and accomplish and finish his goal. For Yeshua to rise bodily from the grave and come out connecting the Aleph to the Tav, that could be seen as the vote. Well, then why won't the Jews acknowledge him? What's the matter with them? Because they're told that JC has annihilated the Torah and taught his disciples to abominate everything sacred. Now, that's my explanation as to why the Jews can't accept JC. But the truth is, Yahusha couldn't and wouldn't do that. Therefore, the Ruach HaKodesh is different than the traditional regard of the Holy Spirit, and Yahushua HaMashiach is different than the traditional regard of Jesus Christ. It's the only way I can rationalize definition in my own mind. And if somebody doesn't like to hear that, then it's like, well, make up your own reasoning then. But here's the point about this blessing. He goes on in verse 27 that says, let them, or cause them, verse 27, Shemo et Shemi. It doesn't say let or cause. It says place, Shin Mem. But Shin Mem is also name. ALEF-TAV, Shin Mem Yod, my name. So fix, place, put, call my name. Well, what's his name? Yahweh Zavot, the Elohim of Israel. Upon my children of Israel, and I shall bless them. Ve'ani barakam. Aleph bet resh kaf mem. Mem plural them. Aleph I will. Ve'ani. In other words, he's saying, you put, by saying this sentence, you put my name, which is my character, which is my Shem, which is where I'm at, onto my children of Israel. Put it on them, place it on them, make it so that they can see it and fathom it. And I will bless them. So he has to, because he said he would. He has no choice but to bless us because we are here discussing his Shem. Upon the understanding, the Ben, the Bean, the Bet Noon of we who want to be his people Israel. He must then, because he said he would, come and bless us. So there's this question I had thinking about these things. Back in my college days, back in the 70s, people had answer machines and you'd call somebody up and say, oh, well, here, God bless you. You know, they'd say, or you'd see a T-shirt, you know, the Jesus People movement was happening and you have a T-shirt that says, oh, you know, God bless you. Or somebody would, you know, have this thing on a bumper sticker, God bless you and keep you, you know, make you say, it's like, wait a minute. Does it still work that way? Does it count? If somebody vocalized, and I'm saying this because of AI. Let me set this back up and set this up. If AI sings a worship song, is it really worship? Or does it need to have human heart generating the sound as an emanation, like light radiating? It's kind of like, you can look at an incandescent light bulb and say, well, that's a filament that's glowing, emanating light. But an LED is just some sort of a digital, well, that's kind of the same thing. But it's like, wait a minute, if a human spirit projects words of Hodu, praise and worship, what's their heart? Is it a true heart, or are they just saying words? I once know a worship leader, like I doing drywall on a job, and I said, you know, there's something about with the way you play music. It almost like takes you into this whole other realm of this dimension of, and you almost feel this dimension shift. And he says, I'm just playing notes. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just playing. It's like, what? Hey, listen, Is he just playing notes? Or is the music somehow opening up a portal to another dimension? But what if AI just digitizes words? Does that count? So if somebody has on an answer machine, God bless you, is some random deity, some arbitrary deity suddenly, oh, an answer machine said, God bless you. I now have to stop what I'm doing and go over there and bless the person listening to the answer machine. Is that the way it works? Is there rules for what God must now obey? Because if you have a t-shirt that says, God bless you, if nobody looks at it, okay, no deity has to get involved. And if all of a sudden some person looks over and says, oh, I see these words. Oh, now he has to stop what he's doing and come down and bless me right now because he said he would. Because somebody said, God bless you. It's kind of sounds stupid, but no, think about this seriously. Or is God bless you just some nice thing to say? I could have a t-shirt that says, may positive vibes from a random source find their trajectory in your direction. Is that the same thing as saying God bless you? It's not what Yahuah Zebot, the Elohim of Israel, said to Aharon through Moshe about how to bless his children, that's for sure. But if you change his name and he says, by saying these exact words, you will place my words, my name, my Shem on my children. If you change his Shem, you wouldn't have to do what he said anymore. That's not him. Oh, Jesus said we could eat whatever we want. That's not him. You place my Shem. You place with the meaning of every one of these letters upon the conscious heart and mind and behavior so that they can Shema and Shomer and Ashah Tav Mem like me, perfectly like me. And then my blessing is there, flowing out into and upon them. I could think, maybe I did think at one point, prayers only of not just Christians, born again Christians, not just born again Christians, spirit filled, not just spirit filled, spirit baptized, filled, born again Christians, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox. Well, I don't know about those guys, but if any of those guys try to pray, it'll bounce off the ceiling, or it'll go up to the firmament and get reflected back. But for have a prayer make it through the throne, through the firmament, into the throne room, to the throne where you actually catch his ear. Man, it's got to go through this whole gauntlet past the security angels that are at the pearly gates. And how do you get your prayers into his vicinity? You got to say in Jesus' name. It's like, yeah, but what if your Jesus in that Jesus name is one of the fake Jesus guys? How many of your prayers are actually getting through to the Father's ear and then into his heart? Well, he told us. So all these thousands of years that they changed history, changed the language, changed the alphabet, and all the while, this little Paleo-Hebrew thing was just sitting there abandoned. Nobody cared. Nobody even acknowledged it. It was just there. But nobody knows, nobody cares. And then all of a sudden, here it is. Imagine that. And all that AI does, spinning around new definitions, new history, new meaning, new hope, new doctrine, doesn't touch this. The Jewish rabbis can say what they want. The Muslim imams, the clerics, the clerks, the clergy of the Christian, they can make up anything they want for their people to believe and hope in. It doesn't change this. What Yahuah said, heed to the 7 days of creation, the 7 Moedim, the Mishkan itself, the Beatitudes, the shape of the Garden of Eden. And every word he said all makes sense. Proverbs 28, verse 4, forsaking Torah, praising evil, guarding Torah. And then there's this word Yod Tav Gimel Resh Vav Bet Mem. Ayin Zayin Bet is forsake. Well, that doesn't say he who forsakes, because it's not Ayin Zayin Bet Vav, it's Ayin Zayin Bet Yod. So that's like my forsaking Torah, then Yod, Hey Lamed Lamed Vav, he will. So that's the thing. You can't always put the Yod and Vav and the Tav at the beginning. And what I'm saying is that this is a little bit, you got to struggle, you got to fit it in, you got to look at the concepts, you got to step back, you got to look close, you got to let your eyes kind of see three-dimensionally. The idea of forsaking Torah praises evil, glorifies evil. Hey Lamed Lamed is where you get the word hallelujah, but it's also Hallel, which is radiates or shines light on. Resh Shinayin. So Resh Ayin is evil, but Resh Shinayin is also evil, wicked, harm, calamity. So it's like, wait a minute. He who forsakes the Torah has a lighthouse of evil. How do you ever find your way home? But he who guards Torah, shamar. So see, the word guard, shamar, is the opposite of forsake. Well, how do you guard? How do you shin mem resh? And then here's the word Yod Tav Gimel Resh Vav. Well, Tav Gimel Resh is TGR. Hey, that's the word tiger. Look it up in the Klein's dictionary. It means provocation or challenge, strife. You see a tiger in the jungle, and it's like, yeah, there's it. Game on. Quarrel, complain, argue, barter, haggle, business venture, commerce, trade, and a dealer of merchandise. And also that little graphic, which isn't on this chart, but I did, of the saber-toothed tiger, saber-toothed cat, the Smilodon, based on this concept of go Tigers. It's like, wait a minute, what are you fighting about? Meaning of words. What did Yahuah say? Let's do what he said. And it's like, well, then that's so easy. It's like, that's right, because it's all become merchandise. It's all become who gets the money. It's become, no, it doesn't have to be any of that. What did Yahuah say? The saber-toothed tiger with the two big teeth, like Somic Yod Pei, the swordsman, the gladiator, the word gladiolus, gladiator, growing up like a sword, the children of Yosef, contending for the meanings of words and being his people. We have a right to the family heritage, house of Ephraim, house of Israel, the lost 10 tribes. And those days are coming back. The house of the southern kingdom may not like it if they think they're a bunch of rogue punks that are just trying to bring Jesus to them as another Christian trick. But if you, let me just say this, and we're time at the end here. I heard once that there was a conference down in Florida somewhere, and a guy that I knew had gone there, and it was some, Messianic Jewish thing or whatever. And he says, hey, he met some Jewish guy. And he says, hey, let me ask you something. You Jews have a unique characteristic. You're sitting there, bowing down, davening, as they call it. It's like, what is that? Why do you do that? You're the only people that do that. And he says, well, each time we bend down, it's a prayer, kind of like Muslim Sufi dancers, Islamic Sufi dancers, that as they spin around, each spin is a prayer. It's a gesture of prayer, not just a vocalization of prayer. Oh, well, what are you praying for when you do that? He says, we're praying for Ephraim to come home. We're praying for Ephraim to come home. Bring us back, and we will come back. How about you? Restore your household. We are your people. Give us the truth. We're sick of the lies. We're sick of being dominated by our enemies, which you subjected us to because we didn't want your word. Thank you for your words. Thank you for Yahusha. Thank you for your Ruach. Thank you for your Torah. Thank you for showing us what these letters mean. Be glorified in us as we find our glory in knowing you. Hallelujah. Amen.
Hallelujah.